Hi, Robert.
Exactly at 11:30 East Africa time anyway. So we're just going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes.
Good morning.
To let some of us join. Good morning.
Good
Hi.
morning.
Morning.
Hi.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Joelle.
Good morning.
Yes, we'll get started in just 1 or 2 more minutes. So thanks for your patience and for being here promptly. Good morning to those of you who are just joining. We're going to wait 1 more minute and then we'll kick off with today's session. Welcome. All right, ladies, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a really good number here with us. I know some of you are turning on your auditors that are doing transcriptions for you, so that's great. They leave us nice little messages in the chat. Anyway, welcome back to the BIC Africa Acceleration Program for Women Entrepreneurs. We're super excited to have you here again with us today. I'm Danielle, for those of you who don't remember, and today I am going to be leading the session as your coach. So just to remind you of where we are in the program, we are now in our 3rd session together, our first coaching session, and today we're really going to be working together in a different sort of way. The training sessions are here to give you lots of information, to help you think about your business, to help you make decisions about things that maybe you haven't decided on already. The coaching sessions are slightly different because they really focus on you as the entrepreneur, you as the woman behind the business, and helping you to uncover different things about yourself that make you a better business owner and a better leader. So today's session is around leadership and influencing, which is super important for all of you, because even if you're just a one-woman team, or maybe you have a team of 50 or maybe even bigger, you are the leader of your business. And it's important for you to understand what that means and also for you to embrace that position. So that's what we're going to be covering today. Like all of the sessions, I really encourage you to participate as much as possible, and you've been doing great at this so far. I'll be prompting you with questions during the session that I'll invite you to answer in the chat. And there'll be times that I also invite you to unmute yourself, to come on screen, and to share with us in that way instead, okay? But the more that you can share, again, the more that we can support you during this journey. And I thank you in advance for your vulnerability. Like I said, you've all been doing so great at this so far, so let's just continue that momentum. So the first question I want to pose to you to open up the session is, what challenges have you faced as a woman entrepreneur? And you can put your answers into the chat. They can be as detailed or as limited as you want them to be. But what types of challenges have you ladies experienced as a woman entrepreneur?
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Siham. Ladies, just to give you a quick introduction, Siham is joining us now from the EBN.
Yes, thank you. I will be
She's joining us
listening.
from the EBN team. She's sitting in with us today to understand a bit more. Yeah, she'll be listening. Great, thank you.
I will be listening, but I will have to switch.
All right, let me read out some of the answers that you ladies are starting to put into the chat. So being mistaken for emotional versus passionate. Yeah, it's interesting how we get labeled. We get labeled differently than our male counterparts sometimes get labeled. And we're told that we're maybe emotional rather than passionate. Joelle says to be okay with the price of our products. Yeah, sometimes as a woman, we don't feel as confident when we're pricing or when we're talking about our price or negotiating our price. Grace has quite a lot, but the ones we are currently having issues with is staffing and resources. Joanna says maintaining male employees because of the gender role assigned to women in her community. It's true, sometimes we can face big challenges as women leaders because our male counterparts, they look down upon us, they don't respect us in the same way, they don't see us as equal, especially in some of the communities that you ladies may be coming from, where there are these disparities still as compared to some other countries or some other cultures. Consistently securing products, access to funding, ensuring that company culture is carried throughout. Yes. For me, at first, people just felt what I was doing was a hobby. But over time, I have been able to build and earn respect for what I do. Now they know that what I do is important. I see this a lot also, where we're just not taken seriously. They think, oh, you know, it's a short-term thing. It's a small business. She'll get over it. It won't be something that's sustainable or long-term. And they don't take us seriously. Let me see. Then we have Hanan, who says, we tend to be seen as we perform lesser than men. Yeah. My clients, and especially my team, often appeal to my emotions, particularly because I'm a mother. When I stay late at work, they make remarks about my children and where they are, who takes care of them. Yeah, how unfair is that, right? I know that we shared in our first session that a lot of us are mothers, and we're given like this almost like a double-edged sword, right? Like we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Like if we were to leave the office early, we would be told that we're not taking our profession seriously. And when we stay late at the office, we're told that we're not taking our family seriously. And we have to somehow find this quote unquote balance that doesn't really exist because it's more of a juggle than a balance, right? We also have Solange, particularly as a woman, I feel insecure about meeting with a male counterpart from a company I haven't interacted with before. I'm afraid it could be a scam. Yeah, I hear you on this. And this is something even I decided not so recently, actually about 7 years ago, to be very diligent about when I was meeting men and at what time and what locations, because a lot of the times I was finding that they weren't serious about doing business, and instead they wanted to maybe take me on a date, or they had other intentions that weren't at all business related. So I've become very, very skeptical about meeting with men, as you say, unless I already know them and have interacted with them before. Joanna says that she's considered high risk for financial institutions, which is funny because, not funny, it's unfortunate, but it's interesting because it's been proven in research that women are actually better with finances and they repay their loans and that they're more successful when it comes to managing money than our male counterparts are. But again, the stereotype, the stigma that's placed against us. Jihan says, challenge is overcoming my shyness when it comes to speak with suppliers or clients about critical subjects like asking for payment. Yeah, this again, it's very common, and maybe not just women related, but I definitely see it as I work with with all women really. This shyness, this lack of confidence, this kind of fear of rejection and of asking for what's rightfully ours, like a payment is due to you. Why do we feel this insecurity when it comes to asking for that? Nadia says one of her challenges, a client that pays too late or doesn't pay at all. Yeah, this is common too. Okay, ladies, you have uncovered a lot of stuff here, and I think there's a lot of common themes. I'd like to just show you now this next slide. So some of the key challenges that I've seen over the years faced by women entrepreneurs. The first one is societal prejudice and bias against women. You ladies have mentioned this. We're seen as lesser than our male counterparts. We're not taken as seriously. The next one is legislative and policy barriers, and maybe this applies in your country, maybe it doesn't, but sometimes there's policies in place that are unfavorable towards women that make it difficult for us to be successful entrepreneurs. And this could even be something as simple as parental leave policies and giving us maternity leave when we have kids. Then you have discriminatory laws and practices. There's the balance of responsibility and unpaid care work. So statistically, women are more likely to be caring for others, whether that be children or parents or other people within their family. They're also doing this extra work of taking care of others in addition to trying to take care of their businesses and take care of themselves. There's limited access to finance and markets. And again, some of you ladies mentioned this in the chat, financial institutions may not take you as seriously. They don't see you as credible or as notable as our male counterparts. So you may not be able to access the finance that you need, or you may not have the access to financial education that you need to run your businesses for a variety of reasons. There's limited access to relevant networks in business. And this can be for a number of factors as well. But one that I see regularly is, again, the timing that things take place. So many networking events take place, outside of office hours. They take place in the evenings. They take place on the weekends. And if we also have this responsibility of taking care of others, it's impossible sometimes to be able to access these networks, and that's unfair, and it makes things a lot more difficult for us to advance ourselves. There's limited access to business knowledge and education. Sometimes, women don't receive as much education as our male counterparts. We're taken out of school early. Again, we're taking care of other people. We may not go on to further education. And so there's this limited access to that knowledge. And that's why things like BIC Africa exists to really promote education in the business space. There's also limited opportunities and rights as entrepreneurs. You may even notice that a lot of accelerator programs, a lot of incubation programs don't have as many women as males in the startup scene, and whether that's we don't apply ourselves and we don't take advantage of these opportunities, or if there's some discrimination happening behind the scenes, I think both are equally at play. There can be low self-confidence. And again, some of you mentioned this in the chat, shyness, lack of confidence. There's also this thing called imposter syndrome. And, hands up if you have experienced imposter syndrome. I know that I have, even though we shouldn't, right? Imposter syndrome means that regardless of how much experience you have, how much education you have, how much knowledge you have, how many accolades you've received, there's still times that you feel like you're a fraud. You're going to be found out. You're not as smart as you think you are. Who do you think you are to think that you could do X, Y, Z? This is something that I have seen literally every single woman that I've worked with over the past 10 years, experience at some point in her career. And I feel like imposter syndrome is something that actually never goes away. Instead, it's something that we just have to learn how to manage and to overcome. Alongside that, there's a fear of failure. And I don't know if this is specific to women. I think that men probably feel this fear of failure also. But we have this fear of failure. We fear that we're going to let people down, that it's not going to work. What are people going to say if it doesn't work? You know, one of you shared a few moments ago that in the beginning, people thought it was just a hobby for you, you know, so you don't want to fail. You want to prove people wrong. You want to show them, no, like I can be successful at this thing that I am setting my mind to. Another challenge that's often faced, and again, every woman that I've ever worked with has admitted this to me, is burnout. We overdo it all the time. We work too many hours. We take on too many responsibilities. We're juggling all of these responsibilities simultaneously. We fail to look after ourselves in the process because there's all these other things that have to be taken care of instead. And so we face burnout. We don't allow ourselves that time and that space to rest in the way that we need to. And when we really hit burnout, our bodies force us to rest. We might get ill. We might be unable to get out of bed. We might become physically sick. And so our bodies are really saying, hey, slow down. You can't keep going at this pace. And then the final thing, and this isn't the final thing, this list is not exhaustive, is silence and acceptance of the status quo. A lot of times we just say, yeah, this is how it is. And we just continue to persevere. We continue to get on with it. We continue to push forward. And we don't really challenge the fact that all of this stuff is happening around us. And that's why women's spaces like this one that we're now in are very important, right? For us to have this dialogue, for us to challenge all of these challenges, for us to think of different ways of doing things so that we can overcome some of the barriers that we're facing. And of course, if you get into more of advocacy positions, you might decide to start trying to persuade policy, whether that's, you know, legislation or political policy, representing your community, standing up for different groups and supporting their needs. And maybe that's a way also to, you know, break the silence and to challenge that status quo. But change does take time. So it really just starts with us as individuals. So today we're going to be talking about you as women in leadership positions. So the quote that I have here, leadership in business is the capacity to set and achieve challenging goals, take fast and decisive action when needed, outperform the competition, and inspire others to perform at the highest level they can. Leadership is a really important position. I'd love to hear now in the chat just a quick survey. How many years have you been a leader for? How many years have you been a leader for? And it may not be just in your current entrepreneurship position. Maybe you were a leader in the past, whether that's in your community or in an employed position. But how many years have you been a leader for? Drop your number in the chat. Wow, 12. 10 years in July, 10 years. 7, 9. 8, 6. 11. Big numbers, ladies. So first round of applause. We have a lot of leaders here for many, many years. 5 years also always in business. Jehan, 5. Yeah. So different ways, Jehan. So in community ways and employment, 3 years, 6 years. Amazing. Yeah, I'm trying to do the math in my head of how many years I've been. So, you know, it's been 11 years as an entrepreneur. And then before that, there was probably another 6 years within employment. But then you think, you know, like Jehan has said, like There's times in university that I led teams. There's times that I did advocacy and community. So it's probably closer to 20 if I count all of those other years up. Amazing. So you are all leaders in your own right, not just in your businesses, but maybe in different aspects. And that's why, understanding the role of a leader and all of the different things that you're responsible for is crucial to helping you to become an even better leader. So it's not just about, setting these goals and being a fast decision maker and understanding competitive landscape, but it's also about bringing the people up below you and inspiring them and helping them and getting the best out of them for you and for your business. Oops. Sorry, my slides are stuck. Okay. So again, back in the chat, what are some skills you think are needed to be a good leader? And they may be skills you have, they may be skills that you don't have, but what are some of the skills that you believe are needed to be a good leader? Empathy, yes. Communication skills, team building skills, active listening. To be able to adjust and adapt to changes and understand fast. Coordination, administrative, emotional intelligence, communication, soft skills like empathy and communication, hard skills like an expert in your field, research, education, communication, empathy, decision-making. Wow, you ladies have hit the nail exactly on the head. It's almost as if you've seen the slides already. This is perfect. Strategic vision, empathy, communication, managerial, taking decisions, ability to mentor, integrity. Yes, thank you for adding that one. Benevolence, continuous learning and emotional intelligence, action, taking action. Yeah, amazing. You have really covered pretty much all of the skills that are needed to be a good leader and more. So the first is, of course, strategic thinking. You need to be able to create that vision for your company, and not just create that vision, but be able to bring others up to inspire them to want to achieve that vision, to execute on that vision. Strategic thinking is also about putting the pieces together in a very ambiguous landscape, being able to see patterns or opportunities, being able to look at your competition and make decisions on that. So really thinking strategically is a super important part. The next one is around people management, and the management of people. You've also, you've shared a lot here, about how to do that. It's not just about getting them to do stuff, but it's about inspiring them, getting them, understanding them, listening when they have concerns, being empathetic about what their needs are, and understanding, okay, not everyone shares the same motivations, not everyone shares the same drive and the same passion. So the way that you get the best out of your people is to look at them as individuals and know that not one size fits all when it comes to people management. So being able to treat them with fairness, to treat them with empathy, to treat them with compassion as you're also executing these things together. Communication, tons of you have touched upon communication, and yes, communication is super important. And to be honest, it's something that a lot of us really struggle with. We may think that we're good communicators, but if we ask the people around us, do they agree? Do we always deliver messages in an effective way, in a friendly way, in a direct way? Or are we being vague in our communication? Are we being less transparent than we should be? So communication is a super important skill to develop, and one to continue to work on as you go through your leadership journey. Then, of course, there's planning and delivery. So really around the execution piece, it's one thing to set a vision, but you also need to mobilize your resources and plan out their activities and give them that direction so that they can take action. Then there's change management. all of us will face change, not just in our lives, but also in our businesses. Things are not always going to go the way that we hoped that they would, or the way that we envisioned that they would. So what do we do in the face of change? We need to be able to understand that change is happening and to be able to alter the course or to set a new course entirely in order to manage that change. And alongside that, helping your people through that change. And then the final one, and again, these aren't exhaustive. You ladies have listed a ton of others that are very relevant in the chat, but the final one listed here is persuasion and influence. You know, you need to be able to influence people and persuade people to come on board with your vision. And those people might be financial institutions like banks or investors. You need to get them to believe in your vision and in your strategy. It may be that you're persuading and influencing your team to execute or to do a great job or to come along with a grand idea that you have, even if it seems risky. It may be that you're trying to persuade or influence your suppliers and, you know, bargaining with them about pricing or delivery times or other terms of engagement that you need. It may be that you're trying to influence or persuade government and government officials and any other offices that you face so that you can do your business. And there's all sorts of other ways that persuasion and influence take place within your position as a leader. So building up on those skills is also very relevant and important. So according to an article published in the Harvard Business Review, and this is back in 2012, but it's still very relevant today, the top 10 competencies based on a survey of 64,000 people around the world. So the ideal modern leader should have these 10 skills. The first is being expressive. So being authentic with what you are delivering and expressing how you feel and how you think is an important skill. The next one is plans for the future. So we talked about this on the last slide, but setting strategy and vision and letting people see into the future. The third is that you are decisive. You make decisions. As a leader, you have to make decisions. You might be making decisions on a daily basis in some cases, but you need to be able to be decisive and to think quickly so that you can make those decisions fast as well. The next one is that you are reasonable. Now, reasonable doesn't mean that you're always agreeing with everybody else and that you're giving up on your vision or your ideas, but it's that you're doing so with reason, that you are pursuing your vision and your strategy, but being able to have reason when you do so. So explaining that reason to other people, not just having everything based on intuition, but having some logic and data behind you to back up what your decision-making process looks like. The next one is that you're loyal. Now, this, again, it doesn't mean that you're loyal to every single person. You need to discern who you're loyal to. And loyalty takes time because it takes trust to build loyalty, but that you're loyal to your people. You don't throw them under the bus if they make a mistake. You don't point fingers and blame somebody else when something goes wrong. That you stand loyal to your people and to your organization, and that is a founding value that you carry with you. The next is that you're flexible. Again, this goes on the basis of change management. You know, sometimes you have to be able to change your mind. Sometimes you also need to be willing to see things from a different perspective or to consider ideas and opinions that are maybe different from whatever it is that you imagined. So being flexible in your approach to how you talk to people, how you interact with people, and how you make decisions is important. The next is that you are patient. As we all know, entrepreneurship has its extreme highs and it has its extreme lows. During those lows, you have to be patient. You have to believe that things are going to get better. You have to give things time. Even when things are going great, you need to be patient. You can't rush everything. You don't need to make decisions instantly all the time. And you're not going to see results all of the time. I see a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs who they decide on something, they decide on a strategy, and then they wait 1 month, maybe they wait 2 months, maximum, maybe they wait 3 months, and then they're quick to change their mind. An example of this is I work with a lot of women who are service providers. So they'll decide that they want to launch a new service. They put it out there. They tell all their potential customers, hey, I'm now doing this thing. Sign up. Here's the price. This is how it works, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe they don't get the numbers that they're looking for. Maybe they don't get any people the first time that they launch whatever their service is. And so they give up. They think that that's not the right service to offer because they didn't have anyone sign up. But in fact, what might have been the problem is that they didn't market long enough, or the marketing that they used didn't convey the right message. It didn't express a problem that their people needed to solve in the right way. So their customers struggled to understand how that service would help them, and therefore they decided not to do it, or in that particular moment. Maybe they didn't follow up enough in the sales process, so they left people hanging. Maybe they picked the wrong time, so they picked a bad day, or they picked a bad week, or they picked a bad whatever, right? And so instead of making those incremental changes to the other parts of their process, they just decide this service isn't the right one. Let me launch something else and start again from scratch. You have to be patient. You have to try to make changes to those other pieces before you throw everything away and say this thing isn't working. So patience is super important. The next is you have to be resilient. Going alongside with patience, that and talking about those highs and those lows and those moments of frustration and sometimes sadness because things aren't going the way that we need it to be. You have to be resilient. You need to keep your eye on your bigger picture and remember, why is it that I'm doing this work that I'm doing? And this is why last week's session around mission and vision and value, mission and vision was so important, because there's a bigger picture than what's in front of you today. And resilience is what's going to keep you getting up and moving towards that vision, even when you get knocked over. And you're going to get knocked over. Entrepreneurship is not for the weak-hearted. There's going to be days that you feel deflated, you feel defeated, and tomorrow you have to get back up and you have to do it again. And so resilience is a very important skill to build. The next one is intuitive. And I know I mentioned before, you have to be reasonable. You need to have data and logic sometimes, but you also need to trust your intuition. You need to be able to feel how things are going to work out, or to feel what direction to go in, and to rely on that intuition and not just always on logic and reason. Sometimes we get a feeling of like, okay, this is the right decision, and we don't know why, but sometimes you have to trust your gut and go in that direction. And then the final skill is being collaborative. So working well with others, bringing others' ideas and opinions into the conversation, working well with your team, working well with your suppliers, with your partners, with sometimes even collaborating with competition to move the industry forward. Being collaborative and being open-minded is also another skill to develop. So these are the top 10 competencies for modern leaders. I would love to hear from you ladies. Which ones do you feel like you have? Which ones do you feel you're missing? And again, pop it into the chat.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, which of these competencies do you feel like you have, and which ones do you feel are missing? Let's see. Joanna says, I'm not always flexible. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to be flexible. Ruth also says she's not flexible. Colo fellow, I struggle with being loyal. I love being explorative. Okay. So are these things that you're good at, or that you struggle with? You mentioned resilience, reasonable plans for future, patient, and collaborative. Are those the ones that you?
It's the ones that I'm good at.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Colofello, I rely heavily on my intuition and very decisive. Grace says flexible, collaborative, but patient. Bolatian, I make decisions very quickly. I have communication background, so I'm good at it, I think, but not patient at all. Really need to work on it. Decisive, flexible. Ruman, decisiveness and collaboration are the ones that she struggles with. Jihan, I have plans for future, loyal, resilient, intuitive, and she's less expressive. Nadia also says she needs to work on patience with the smiley face. Solange, I think I'm reasonably good in all. I could follow more her intuition. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to follow our intuition because we give ourselves so many rational reasons, well, what we think are rational reasons of why our intuition is wrong. And then months or maybe even years later, we're like, you know what, I was right about that thing. And, you know, we second guess ourselves. Joelle also says, I'm not patient. Nina says, I'm less resilient. Maria, flexible, patient, collaborative, loyal, decisive, and reasonable. Great. And it's not a must that you have all 10 or that you're great at all 10. What's more important is that you recognize where you do have these strengths and where you have weaknesses. And you can choose whether you work on your weaknesses or if you instead maybe surround yourself with others who are great at that stuff that you're not great at, right? So if there's things that you're not good at, you can always build up your leadership team and those around you to compensate for that. Let's see, we have a few more. Daisy, I need to work on my patience. Maria says she's not resilient. Hanan, I tend to hold my anger inside, not to put it out on her employees. Yeah, there's a fine line, right? You don't want to, of course, get so angry that you're rude or that you're, you know, mean or scary. But it's important to express what you're feeling and to kind of uncover what is the real reason for that anger? What is it that's making you angry? And maybe not explaining in that moment, you know, taking a step back and reflecting upon that and really understanding where is this emotion coming from before you try to then explain this to somebody else. Because if you try to explain it in the moment, you might make yourself more angry and then explode. Or, you know, a lot of us sometimes can be what they call passive aggressive. So we're angry on the inside and on the outside, we think that we're being friendly and nice, but we're not. We're still being aggressive, but in a very passive way. Yeah, so Hannah, when they don't do the job they were delegated to do. Yeah, so this is really about communication, building out that communication so that you can say to them, hey, you didn't do what I expected to, or you didn't meet the expectations that I was hoping for you. And this is the impact that has had. The longer that you allow complacency and poor performance to happen within your organization, the more ultimately you're going to suffer. So it's really important to express these things and address these things and to talk about the things that are scary to talk about. Maria, I would like to be more expressive. Seheno, I would like learn to follow her intuition. Gabiso, I was encouraging my team this morning to be mindful of their body language. Yeah, see, exactly that. Like you might be pretending to be fine, but your face might say something completely different, or your body might say something completely different. So even though we think that we're being nice and friendly, usually people can tell that we're in a mood or something's bothering us. Nina, when I take a decision, I see and feel that the decision is hard for my team and the realization is not easy. Yeah, sometimes we have to make hard decisions and not everyone is going to like them. And I think here is where empathy really plays an important role of understanding, maybe even before you communicate the decision, like how is my team going to feel about this? How are they going to respond to this? What can I do to support them through that? And even though they may not like the decision, I'm sure you have your reasons for it. So giving them those reasons and, you know, telling them what your thought process was or how you came to your conclusion sometimes helps to ease the discomfort and the upset feelings that your team might be experiencing. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Now I want to present to you this idea of masculine versus feminine leadership. And this comes from a theory called the Athena Doctrine, which is a book from 2013. And what they say, what these two men, I have to say, it's a male written book, but they talk about feminine leadership. So there's characteristics that are often perceived as masculine, and there are some that are often perceived as feminine. And I put a handful of them up here on the screen. So again, I would like you to think about and share again in the chat, like, what are some of the leadership traits that you have, whatever side they sit on, whether they're masculine or feminine? What are some of the ones that you feel that you have? So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to look over all the words that are here. And I would like for you again to share in the chat, which traits do you feel like you have? And then I'll talk a bit more about masculine versus feminine. So Ruth shares, I'm creative and multitasking. Nina says, gentle and generous. It's really me. Boletiana says, competitive, independent, daring, emotional, multitasking, generous, encouraging. Grace says, creative, team player, and multitasking. Seheno, multitasking, helpful, imaginative, and listener. Rumen, straightforward, brave, and independent for the masculine traits. Jihan, leader, creative, multitasking, adaptable, gentle, sensitive, open to ideas, hardworking, and independent. Adeze, oh no, I read that. Oh no, okay. Adeze, resilient, innovative, hardworking, leader, driven, multitasking, supportive, honest, confident, team player, reasonable, encouraging, listener, and open to ideas. Mikhail, team player, loyal, creative. Solange, logical, driven, adaptable, gentle, independent, sensitive, open to ideas, flexible, creative, resilient, leader. Cambiso, leader, logical, analytic, assertive, resilient, decisive, multitasker, supportive, encouraging. Nadia, emotional, multitasking, open to ideas, creative. Narendra, hardworking, committed, open to ideas, adaptable, assertive, resilient. Joanna, loyal, ambitious, perceptive, hardworking, and logical. Keep popping them in. I'm not going to read out any more, but what I wanted to share with this particular slide with you is to let you see that there are all sorts of different traits that we carry as leaders. And the ones that are on the left-hand side of the screen are often perceived as masculine traits. That doesn't mean that they're just shown by men, but they're called masculine because there's masculine and feminine energy in all of nature, in all of the universe. And some things are inherently masculine and other things are inherently feminine, and it's to do with the way that we present ourselves to the world. Now, all of you have pretty much shared that you share traits on both sides of this slide. But what has happened over decades and probably even centuries is that the ones that are on the left-hand side, the masculine traits, they are the ones that are more valued historically in the workplace. They are the ones that are seen as a more leadership type of role. And because men tend to display those types of characteristics more often maybe than females do, we're often seen to be more emotional, we're seen to be more collaborative, we're seen to be better listeners, where we're often penalized when we start to shift over and start to show those masculine traits. You know, one of you, I can't remember who was earlier in the beginning, you shared, you know, like if a male colleague were to behave in the same way as a female colleague, the male colleague might be praised for it, and the woman colleague, the female colleague, might be told that she's being too emotional. Whereas they're doing the exact same thing, they're behaving in the exact same way. It's just that you're seen as this is acceptable of a man, but it's not acceptable behavior for a woman, and that's a shame, right? And I think that this is now changing slowly, and in some countries faster than others. And these ones that are on the right-hand side are becoming more accepted, more expected, and more valued as a different way of doing leadership, a different way of motivating our teams. The leadership style that has existed for the past, century or, even longer is one that is being shown to not be as effective as we move into, we're not moving into the 21st century, we're very much here, but in the 21st century and in different ways of working and in different types of work environments across different generations, the ones that are more considered feminine traits are starting to be valued a little bit more. So this slide isn't to say that you need to display more masculine or that you need to display more feminine. It's just to, again, raise your awareness so that you understand where you're currently sitting on this spectrum. I think that it is important for us to continue to show feminine leadership traits. I think that there is a very strong place for it. I think that it encourages our employees in different ways. It gets better results. It just isn't always as accepted in society because they are just used to the left-hand side of the way that things are done. Okay. Oops. I'd now like to present you with these 6 different types of leadership styles, and I would like for you ladies to each identify which one style you think best represents you. Oh yeah, and okay, so Gavisto says, I also agree, and we should not apologize for being feminine. No, we shouldn't. We should be authentic. We should be authentic as leaders. We should be authentic as women. We should be authentic as individuals, as humans, and to proudly display whichever leadership traits are authentic to you and that are effective. Obviously, the negative traits that were there are ones that you may want to work on. If you feel like something is being detrimental to your organization or even to yourself, that's something that you might want to change your behavior on. But we shouldn't apologize for being more feminine and embracing our femininity, even in employment and in entrepreneurship. Okay, so the 6 leadership styles. I would love for you ladies now to just choose which one resonates most with you. So the first one is a commanding leader. A commanding leader is the one that says, do what I tell you. There isn't really room for negotiation. You're probably not listening to their opinions or ideas. You just want to tell them what to do and to make sure and that they go off and they do it. The next type of leader is a visionary leader. This is someone who's going to paint the picture of what the future looks like and really try to encourage their people to come along with them and to do so in a supportive way. The next one is an affiliative leader. So an affiliative leader might have the mantra of people come first. And what this means in practice is that this type of leader might make a decision that benefits their people more than it benefits the organization or even indeed like their product or their service and what they're selling. They really value putting people before everything else, and people become the forefront of their decision-making process and their leadership style. A democratic leader will have a mantra of, what do you think? So they may not take the opinions of others as a decision, but they'll at least want to hear what other people think of and what their opinions are and what their ideas are, and try to get as much buy-in as possible before going in a certain direction. The next type of leader is a pace-setting leader. So if you think about a marathon, the pace setter is the one that's running and keeping everyone up to speed with them. So a pace-setting leader is going to be trying to show an example. They're trying to set an example. They're trying to say, you know, watch what I do and try to follow me in this process at this particular speed and at this particular, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's gone. But at this cadence. So really bringing people along the ride with you. And then the final leadership style is a coaching leadership style. A coaching leadership style will really give direction, but in a way of like, hey, try this. You know, is this something that you might want to consider? Is this a solution that could work for you? And really trying to build up their employees along the way as they're taking these steps towards the vision that they've created, and allowing them to make mistakes along the way as well. So of these six, which one most resonates with your leadership style? Okay, we have visionary, if needed, another one, pace setting, coaching, visionary. Between democratic and coaching, democratic, visionary, coaching. Good. Cabiso, I believe I am 70% visionary and 30% affiliative. The 30% is because I believe that the health of the company is in the hands of the team. Healthy and happy employees deliver. Beautiful. Yeah. Narendra says, I can't decide between pace setting and coaching. Coaching style is preferable style, but in certain situations I use another one. Mikhail says democratic. Yeah, Solange, actually what you said is super important here, right? It may be that we do have to shift our leadership style depending on the situation. It might also be that as our organization grows, we change our style from one to a different one. So for example, when you talk about coaching as your preferable style, sometimes you might have to just say, hey, do this and do it like this and be very commanding because the situation is it requires that in that moment. And that's okay. It's important to know what these different types of styles are because you might want to shift based on the type of situation that you're finding. You might realize that you can't just coach people to figure it out on their own. Sometimes you have to tell them exactly what they need to do because it's urgent or it's critical or it's something brand new or that's just how it is in that particular moment. Or perhaps when an employee is brand new, you might say, you might be more commanding, do as I tell you. And then as they grow and they start learning how things work, you can move into a more of a coaching type of leadership style because they've now learned all of the policies and procedures and how things work. Nina shares, I have difficulty by doing commanding. Yeah, commanding, a lot of people won't like it, right? They'll feel very left out. They'll feel like you're just bossing them around. Jihan, democratic, but sometimes commanding. Yeah. Maria says democratic and visionary. Yeah, great. Good. Okay. And then before we move on to the next section, which is really about self-awareness, I want us to just talk again about feminist leadership style. So Marilyn Loden is an author from the US, and what she shares is the feminist leadership style emphasizes cooperation over competition, intuition, as well as rational thinking and problem solving. Team structures where power and influence are all shared within the group. Interpersonal competence and participative decision-making. So when I read this quote from Marilyn Loden, I love what feminist leadership sounds like. You know, I think that this is definitely a great way to run an organization. It feels authentic to who I am. It feels authentic to how I want my organization to be run. It makes sense to me. And so if this is what the definition of feminist leadership is, I am 100% for it, and not worrying about doing things the way that things have always been done, just because the outside world may see that as the right sort of leader. So the important takeaway here is really just to embrace what is authentic to you. And to be authentic, you really need to have self-awareness. You need to know who you are as an individual. You need to understand what you stand for, and you need to be authentic in how you display that in your organization and in your personal life. So we're now going to move on to a section on self-awareness. Just to help you, again, to understand more about yourselves and how you want to be leaders. So self-awareness is the ability to focus on yourself, your actions, thoughts, or emotions in order to objectively evaluate yourself, manage your emotions, align your behavior with your values, and understand correctly how others perceive you. So let me move to the next slide. So why does self-awareness matter? So first, your personality is a collection of thoughts, beliefs, worldviews, feelings, tendencies, and behaviors. Your experiences and environmental conditions condition these patterns into you. You come with them from when you're young, and over the years, your experiences either reinforce your values or they negate your values. Your environment also conditions you to think and believe in certain ways, but you're often unaware what these subconscious patterns are. And because you're unaware, you don't really know how they affect you and those around you. So by getting to know your personality, you can bring more consciousness to how you behave and whether that behavior is beneficial or detrimental to yourself and those around you. It can really help you manage your reactions to different situations. It can help you to make better decisions and communicate more effectively with your team. Your self-awareness can also help you understand the impact that you have on other people. So you can become more empathetic and basically create a culture of trust and respect within your organization. When you lack self-awareness, there are these different symptoms which often present themselves. So the first is that you might experience self-doubt and a lack of confidence. The next is that you are inauthentic. You experience inauthenticity. You may display a lack of empathy. You may be led by biases. So you may have certain beliefs or preferences that are very subconscious, but that influence your decisions and your actions, and you don't even know it. You don't even know that these biases exist. You might have inconsistency and a lack of direction. You may also have inefficiency and low productivity. So do you ladies feel like any of these symptoms are currently present for you? If so, pop them into the chat and let us know what symptoms are you currently experiencing due to potentially a lack of self-awareness. And again, no judgment. It's a safe space. So if you feel like something is missing, you know, be open and share. Joanna shares self-doubt and inefficiency. Hanan also self-doubt. Boletiana, low productivity of the team. Self-doubt and lack of confidence. Self-doubt, that's a common one. And you ladies are certainly not alone in that. As I shared earlier, I would say all of the women I've ever worked with, and myself included, have experienced self-doubt and a lack of confidence sometimes. Hafsa, self-doubt and inefficiency. Narendra, self-doubt and low productivity. Kabiso, I am patient. Oops. I am patient to an extent, and once the limit has been reached, I can lack empathy. I can only imagine what that might look like. Other times I struggle with self-doubt and lack of confidence, imposter syndrome. Rumor and self-doubt and lack of confidence, inefficiency, inconsistency, self-doubt. Yeah, so self-doubt is the most common one that we're seeing here. And like I said, even just a moment ago, I see this time and time and time and time again. And we really need to ask ourselves, like, where is this doubt coming from? Why is it that I'm feeling this doubt? Is it because there's actually evidence to support the fact that I can't do this thing? Is it through these voices that are in my head telling me that I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not whatever, I'm not young enough, I'm not old enough? Like, there's all these different things that come up in terms of that voice that's telling us these nonsense things, right? That we're listening to, we're choosing to listen to. So the more awareness we can have in listening to those voices and interrogating what the underlying thing is, the more that we can overcome it. One thing that I recommend to my clients to do when they're experiencing imposter syndrome is to write down all of the reasons why they can do that thing. What is the evidence that you already have that supports the fact that you can do this thing? And that in its way is helpful. Another thing is to write down your accomplishments, write down the things that are going well in your business. Because another reason that imposter syndrome and self-doubt comes is because we have a negative bias. We focus on the negative. Again, this is a normal thing that happens in human behavior, of focusing on the negative and saying, okay, here's an example. Imagine you have a flower patch, a patch of dirt, and you planted in this patch of dirt 15 different seeds to grow. Every day you go out into the dirt and you water the seedlings, the seeds, waiting for them to come into seedlings and to sprout through. One day you finally see a little seedling has popped in, one of the 15 in the corner, and you're so excited, you're so happy, you've done it, one of them has grown, you feel so proud. And then instantly you say, but look at these other 14. These other 14 still haven't grown. These other 14, what's wrong with them? I'm not that good. Yes, one of them grew, but 14 of them haven't. And so you give up. You stop watering those other 14. You even stop watering the one that was growing. And so then you have nothing. There's just a patch of dirt, right? So by focusing on the fact that there were 14 that were still remaining to sprout, and neglecting that, okay, yes, great, one of them did, and you were so excited for that moment, but then instantly you turn to the fact that there's 14 that haven't. You then lose yourself in that process. You give up on that process, and the 14 never sprout. So it's really about recognizing that one that has, being proud of that one that has, and then keep going. Because maybe if you'd watered it another day or another 2 days or another 3 days, you'd find that more and more and more of them sprout out, okay? So really just focusing on your accomplishments, focusing on the things that are going well, and believing that other things are gonna go well too. Mikhail shares, I always don't find an answer about imposter syndrome. Can you explain? Can you join me? Can you come off mute and explain a little bit more? Like maybe you can give me an example. Mikhail? Oh, I think she's dropped off. Okay, well, maybe she'll come back. I think is she here? Let's see. No, okay. If she comes back, I'll ask her to come on. But imposter syndrome, yeah, it can be difficult to overcome because we let the imposter voices overpower the ones that tell us that we have credentials, the ones that tell us that we've done things before, the ones that tell us that we've succeeded, even if it's in other areas. Because of course, when you go out and you start your organization, maybe you never did this thing before. When I left my full-time employment now 11 years ago to then become a business coach and consultant, I'd never done it before. I'd never run a business before. So of course there's that doubt that's going to be there that says, hey, who do you think you are? Why do you think that this is going to work? And if I really challenge it, I can say, I believe it's going to work because everything else that I put my mind to has worked. Everything else that I've worked hard at has worked. Everything else that I've figured out along the way has worked. And so why would this not work if I'm able to put the time, the effort, the education, the learning, the networking around this? why can't it work? And now 11 years later, you know, of course it's worked. So I think it's about looking for things that may not be directly related to what you're doing right now, but showing yourself evidence of when it's worked before, even if it's something different, giving yourself evidence of your strengths, giving yourself evidence of your resilience, giving yourself evidence of previous decisions that you've made that have worked out in your favor. Because let's be honest, like since we were born, we've been doing things that we don't know how to do. Those of you that have children around you, you'll see they don't come out knowing how to walk. They figure that out along the way, and they fall down and they fall down and they fall down. And eventually they stop falling down because they're like, oh, that hurts if I do that. Let me be a bit more steady. And that's the same as everything that you've done before. You started school as a child, not knowing any of that stuff. You learned as you went. You maybe went into employment, not knowing how that worked. You learned as you went. Everything that you do in life is a learning process. And you have to just give yourself that grace and that time to allow yourself to make mistakes, to allow yourself to be a beginner, and to also remind yourself of where you've come from and what's gone well before. I think, in my opinion, that's a way to kind of combat imposter syndrome. I don't think it ever truly goes away. I think that we just learn how to manage it better by doing things like that, by looking for evidence that supports the fact that we can do hard things. We've done hard things before. We've done new things before and we've succeeded. And so why not give this one a chance? Another thing to tell yourself or remind yourself of is, I wouldn't be chosen for this if someone else also didn't believe in me. So if you're given an opportunity, if a client comes to you and wants to buy from you, if a supplier comes to you and believes in your idea, they obviously are seeing something in you also, which can help to increase your or reduce your self-doubt and imposter syndrome. But it's hard. I know it's hard. So again, some benefits of self-awareness: it helps you understand your motivations. You can better manage yourself from others, increases your ability to adapt behavior. It can improve your relationships because you can be more empathetic. It can increase your confidence. It helps you understand your reactions. So why are you so quick to be impatient? You know, what is driving that? It can help you make better decisions. It can build on your strengths and ultimately help you to be a better leader. Some areas in which self-awareness can bring real improvements include teamwork, decision-making, leadership, understanding others, coping with stress, and personal satisfaction. Nina asks, would I explain again what it means to be led by biases? Sure. So you may have biases that you don't know about. So for example, you might prefer working with women over men. There might be a reason for that. You may not even know what that reason is. Or you might prefer working with men over women. That's a bias, right? And so because of that, you might be hiring women into your organization rather than hiring men into your organization, or vice versa. You might have biases that are generational. So meaning you don't want to work with super young people because you think, whatever stereotype you think, that they're not loyal, they're not committed, they're all over the place. Or maybe you don't want to work with old people because you feel like they don't adapt, they're not flexible, they are on their way out of the workforce because they'll retire soon. So these are biases that might, again, inform not only your decision-making in terms of who you bring into your organization, but it might inform whose ideas you listen to, whose opinions you respect, who you turn to when things are difficult, because you have these internal biases that exist that you don't really know are there. It could even be preferences that have nothing to do with people, but have to do with, let's say maybe your suppliers, other organizations that you work with. You might have preferences one versus another, and you don't really know where those things come from, but they're internal to you somehow. So the more you can understand, why do I prefer working with this supplier over that supplier? Why do I prefer working with this team member versus that team member? Why do I prefer working in this country versus that country? Understanding what's driving your motivation and your decision making just helps you be more aware of why you're making the decisions that you might be making. I hope that helps. Okay, so there's 4 real ways to help to increase your self-awareness. The first one is to reflect constantly. So ask yourself these questions that we were just talking about. You know, what decisions have I made this week? What led me to make those decisions? What opinions did I have about other people this week? What caused me to have those opinions? Reflect upon your own performance. Like what, you know, a lot of you talked about patience. You can ask yourself, in what ways was I impatient this week? And ask yourself the question, why? In what ways was I a commanding leader rather than a coaching leader? Why? You know, really reflecting upon things that you've done in the week behind you, or even in the day behind you, or the month behind you, however frequently you want to do it, and asking yourself these questions to get to better understand your own intrinsic drivers and motivations. The next is to ask for feedback. So feedback, it's something that often happens within structured employment. You know, we have these ideas of 360-degree feedback, where we get feedback from our bosses, we might get feedback from our peers, we might get feedback from the people that we manage and lead. But as entrepreneurs, how often do we seek feedback from other people, except maybe in the case of feedback from our clients? Our clients, we usually are very readily willing to ask them about feedback because it helps us better the business. But how often are you asking for feedback from the people around you to better understand what impact you're having on them, how you can improve, what you're doing great, what you could do better? And building this feedback into your regular cycle of understanding how you're being perceived by others, and then addressing the things that make sense. Of course, you don't have to respond to all feedback that you're receiving, but if you're consistently receiving the same message from different places, it may be something to look into a little bit further. And then the last two are two that we're going to do together today in our last 20 minutes. So the first is to identify your vision and your personal values. So we did our vision last week. We're really going to talk about personal values today. This is important because, as we talked about last week, knowing where you're going is going to get you up every day, hopefully. It's going to keep you going when things are tough. It's going to help you inspire the people around you. And then knowing your personal values also will help to drive you as a leader. It helps you understand, why do you do the things that you do? What do you want to make sure makes things authentic? You know, if you know what your values are, then you can make sure that you're embodying those values in everything that you're doing. And we talked a bit last week about what your company values are, but today we're going to talk a little bit more about personal values. And then the last one is to understand your personality profile. So we had you do a quick assessment before this class on your personality, your DISC personality profile. We're going to talk about that for a little bit at the end of today's session, just to get a feel for what you learned in that process and how you can improve your leadership based on that information. Okay, so this next exercise is to explore your values. I want you to look at this list. And again, it's not exhaustive. There might be something that is very important to you that isn't listed here. That's okay. I want you to choose your top 5 values from this list. And then write them in the chat. And if one of your values isn't listed, feel free to write that as well. There's a space for other at the end, but choose maximum of 5, okay? Great. Let me read out a few of them. Colofelo, punctuality, balance, commitment, gratitude, wisdom. Joanna, acceptance, honesty, integrity, teamwork, thankfulness. Narendra, integrity, excellence, professionalism, humility, and adaptability. Hanan, creativity, authenticity, gratitude, commitment, and teamwork. Nina, courage, determination, knowledge are our main values. If I had to choose, I say passion and strength. Tiana, ambition, respect, encouragement, leadership, passion. Kabiso, determination, excellence, assertiveness, faith, humility. I would also add resilience and intentionality. Rumran, optimism, honesty, humility, respect, prayer. Saheno says integrity. Hamdi, creativity, flexibility, helpfulness, responsibility, teamwork. Mikhail, pace, philanthropy, adaptable, agile. Nadia, courage, creativity, gratitude, optimism, teamwork. Oops, you guys are typing so fast. Grace says adaptability, collaboration, creativity, learning and self-control. Solange, authenticity, credibility, growth, independence, simplicity. Okay, great. I'm not going to read the others. There's lots of them there. Thank you for that first piece of the exercise. What I would like you to do as homework, I'm going to pop 3 questions into the chat for you. And I'll also, Christina, if we can also put these maybe into the WhatsApp chat, that would be helpful so that they have it as a reference. I want you to interrogate these values a bit more. So the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, why is this value important to you? And you'll do it for each of the 5. Why is this value important to you? And what this will really help you understand is it something that's really for me and from me, or is it something that has come from somewhere else that I believe is something I should be adhering to? So I really want you to interrogate, why is this particular value important to me? And if you can't come up with a good reason, then maybe it's okay to shift your value to something else that you can justify. So why is this value important to you? The next one, what behaviors currently support this value? So what behaviors are you currently doing on a regular basis in your work, in your home life, in your outside personal life that currently supports this value? And then what behaviors are out of alignment for this value? So what are you doing currently, whether again, it's at work or at home or in the larger scope outside, that is out of alignment with that value? And I'd love you to reflect on that as homework, just to better understand, are these the right 5 values for you? Are these the ones that you want to be standing for? And if not, do you need to shift them? Okay. Oops. Okay. Oh, my screen's stuck. All right, the last thing that we're going to talk through in our time together is around personality profiles. So we had you all do the DISC personality profile in advance of today's session. If you haven't yet had a chance to do it, that's okay. You can do it afterwards. But the reason that we had you do this is because it really helps you understand what is your predominant style, right? What type of leader are you based on, these personality tests? And there's so many different tests that are out there. DISC is just one of them. There's also Myers-Briggs, there's Clifton Strengths, there's other psychometric tests that you can find, but DISC is the one that is often used in the leadership space. So the steps for success with DISC is first to identify your behavioral style, which you can do in your in that assessment. The next is to then identify, understand, and appreciate people who have different styles. So by learning more about the DISC profile in its entirety, you can start to understand how other people might be in terms of their DISC profile, and therefore what type of communication works better for them, what type of interaction works better for them. How can you shift your own style to better meet those around you? So then the third step is then to develop a process and a technique to communicate with different styles so that you get better results from the people around you. So the benefits of learning DISC are listed here. So it's a universal language of observable human behavior. By learning your characteristics, you can improve on your communication. It lets you better understand yourself and others. Research has proven that in terms of how people act, there are similar characteristics universally. Increased communication leads to increased understanding of each other, which means less stress, more productivity, better results. And the last reason is because it helps you understand that people do things for a reason, and their reason is not always going to be yours. We can often think that people are behaving because of us, but in fact, they're behaving because of themselves. They have their own style, their own personality, their own way of doing things, and each and every one of us is completely different. So the font on this slide is very, very small. I apologize for that, but you'll be able to access these later and blow it up a bit. So there's 4 different personalities in the DISC profile. The first is D, which stands for dominance. Dominance means that you're usually direct, decisive, and to the point. You might be strong-willed, you enjoy challenges, and you want to see immediate results. So you may prioritize getting those immediate results, taking action, and challenging yourself and others. The I stands for influence. So if you have I as your personality type, you are probably optimistic, social, and outgoing. You enjoy being on teams and motivating others. You're probably motivated by social recognition, so being recognized by your peers. You don't want to face disapproval. You want to maintain your influence, and you don't like being ignored. You really thrive on those relationships with other people. The next is S for steadiness. So you might be a team player, cooperative and supportive of others. You prefer being in the background, working in a stable environment, and you probably are good at listening and prefer to avoid conflict and change. You will notice that you are patient, you're probably collaborative, you have a calm approach, and you exhibit humility. And then the final one, C, for conscientiousness. So you are probably conscious and concerned. You focus on details a lot, and you want there to be quality around you. You tend to plan ahead, and you're concerned about accuracy. You probably fear things like social criticism, being wrong, and you don't want to be pressured for immediate decisions. You want to be able to take your time and think things through. So you all had an opportunity to do your personality profiles, hopefully. So please share in the chat, which one was the one that resonated most with you? Was it D, I, S, or C? And I know there was a little bit of crossover, so you might have, scored highly on both S and C, or D and I. I from Solange. Boletiana C, I from Hannah, S from Ruth. D from Jihan, Kabisod C, D. I from Nina. CS from Joanna. Narendra says